Yeah, their brother's connecting.
Okay, good. Okay, so here we're going to go. Good evening. Welcome everyone to the Island of Key Largo Federation of Homeowner Associations and the Tavernier Community Association Candidate Forum. I am Dottie Moses. I am the president of the Federation, and thank you for joining us tonight. Be aware that we are recording this event tonight. It is very much a part of our democratic process to elect candidates that will represent us in our government, and we appreciate this opportunity to learn more about our candidates so we can be informed when we vote. We would like to thank the candidates for running for office. It can be a daunting task, and we wish you the best of luck in your efforts. For those of you that may not know our organizations, I would like to tell you a little bit about us. The Federation is a nonprofit community organization whose members come from 28 different subdivisions, representing over 2,500 property owners. Our mission is to promote the general welfare and enhance the quality of life of its members. And I am going to have Jennifer Hartman tell you a little bit about her organization.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Jennifer Hartman, and I'm the Vice President of Tavernier Community Association. We are a non-profit organization with a mission to provide a community voice to represent the needs and desires of the Tavernier community in those matters that the community deems important. And on behalf of TCA, I'd like to thank you all for being here.
Okay, all right, thank you, Jennifer. So I think for the best experience to view this, if you put yourself on gallery mode, you'll see the different speakers spotlighted as they come online. And our moderator tonight is Richard Barretto. He's the board member of the Tavernier Community Association. Our timekeeper is D.A. Aldridge with the Federation. And so I will now hand it over to Richard so he can start his questions.
Thank you, Dottie. Again, my name is Richard Barretto. I live in Tavernier, and I want to thank all the candidates for being here, all the viewers who are watching now, and all the viewers who will watch the recorded version at some time later. I would also like to extend a sense of appreciation to all of the members of the TCA and the Key Largo Federation for all their efforts in organizing this event. The questions to be asked tonight have not been selected by me. They were made from submissions from our respective memberships. The order of interviews today has been selected as they will appear on the official general ballot. I will do my best to alternate my questions to the candidates. Some candidates had other obligations this afternoon and will not be here today. If you are the only candidate appearing in a particular race, you will be asked the question and allowed as you see fit. I only ask that you do refrain from attacking your opponent, who obviously will not have an opportunity to respond. There will be no opening statement. There will be a 1-minute closing statement at the conclusion of the questions. You will have up to 2 minutes to respond to each question, and rebuttals will be allowed if the candidate refers to another candidate. Those rebuttals will be allowed immediately following the initial response and will be limited to 30 seconds. Our timekeeper will give audible notice at 15 seconds remaining. You will hear the word warning. And again, when your time is concluded, at which time you will hear the word time. We ask that you conclude your comments at that time. If there's no questions, I will begin with the race for the state attorney, 16th Judicial Circuit. There are 2 candidates, Dennis W. Ward and Donald C. Barrett. The first question will be directed to candidate Ward. The question: diversion programs for first-time offenders have shown to be extraordinarily successful. As state attorney, would you support the continuing diversion programs, and if so, for what types of offenders?
Yes, I would continue to use the diversion programs we have available to us. Just a couple off the top of my head. Drug court, a very important diversion program. It helps to get people back on track who have fallen into addiction with drugs or using them for social events. We like to use that, and then at the end of that, they complete that, and their record is clean. We have a pretrial intervention, a diversionary program that minor offenders can get into and resolve their issue, and the cases will be null prost. We also have a DUI diversionary program called Back on Track for first-time offenders, and it allows them to plead to a reckless driving, and once they've completed that, then there'll be a withhold of adjudication to a reckless driving charge. And one of the most, I guess, I'm most proud of this diversion program is our juvenile diversion program. That's for juveniles who commit nonviolent offenses, for instance, graffiti, possession of marijuana under 20 grams, everything that's not a violent crime that's a misdemeanor. They're afforded the opportunity to get a juvenile citation, and when they come in, they're given some tasks, some community services, maybe some rehab and things of that nature. And when they complete that successfully, then those charges are dropped. And that's a pretty good program. We've got a
Morning.
thank you. We've got a 94% rate of non-recidivism. So it's a very, very good program. We're only one of 3 jurisdictions that have this in the state. Thank you.
Thank you, Candidate Ward. The next question is for Candidate Barrett. If elected, can you state your most important goal and how that goal will benefit the citizens of Monroe County?
Yes, good evening, everyone. Good evening, Mr. Barreto, Ms. Moses. Thank you for having us tonight. I appreciate the opportunity. If elected, my most important goal is really twofold, but they're related. First of all, we need to straighten out the personnel at the state attorney's office. They've had a major crimes prosecutor who was suspended by the Florida Bar for unethical conduct. There needs to be a top to bottom review of the personnel of the state attorney's office to make sure the right people are in the right positions to handle the right kinds of cases. Part of that revamp will be proper training of prosecutors, whether they be new prosecutors, young prosecutors, new hires who might be their first job in the law. They need to be trained properly by the state attorney, by the more seasoned prosecutors who are in the office, who've been there for a number of years. And we need to foster an environment where people understand that working at the state attorney's office is a higher calling. And it's not just a job, but it's a mission. And it's a mission to make the entire community a safer place to live and a safer place to visit. So I want to restore ethics and professionalism and a sense of honor working at the state attorney's office, so that people who work there stay and there's some longevity, which will translate into more effective prosecutions, more justice for the citizens of this county.
Thank you, Candidate Barrett. Next question would be for Candidate Ward. If reelected, what will you feel would be your greatest challenge during your next term?
Well, when I'm reelected, there's a number of challenges, but the most important is to get work with the judges to get our courts back on track here again. As you know, our cases are backlogged, and there's a number of issues, but the most pressing issue is trying to get jurors in so we can start doing some jury trials. And once you get to that point, when you start actually putting a defendant's feet to the fire, there's a tendency for lawyers to have their client take a plea or go to trial. But the big thing about that is we want to make sure that the environment is safe and secure for jurors coming in to hear these cases. I don't recommend just doing this recklessly. There needs to be some scientific involvement here, and we do. We have a committee up in Tallahassee that was established by the Florida Supreme Court that's looking into trying to get jury trials back together again. Recently, there was the first one that was held up in Flagler County because they had a small amount of virus up there, and it was a fleeing and eluding case, and the jurors deliberated on that and came to a verdict. That's a big challenge, and the other big challenge is the urban sprawl in Dade County. Recently, we had a drug ripoff in Key Largo Park on a Sunday afternoon. perpetrated by a 16-year-old male from South Dade County. We charged him as an adult. Later on, we learned that his brother is a member of the South Dade 700, which is a very violent gang in South Florida. And we need to keep sending messages up there that we're not going to tolerate that. We're not going to tolerate that kind of behavior in our parks. God forbid that an innocent bystander could have been hit in the head there on that particular day. So that's why that guy was charged as an adult.
Thank you, Candidate Ward. The next question for Candidate Barrett. Don, could you tell us why you would make a better state attorney than our current state attorney?
Yes, thank you. First and foremost, I'll make a better state attorney because I have much more real-world legal experience than the current state attorney. The current state attorney has never tried a felony case, and that's just simply unheard of among state attorneys. There are 20 judicial circuits in the state of Florida, so there are 20 state attorneys, and I'm willing to bet that you would not find another state attorney in the state of Florida, besides our state attorney, who's never handled a felony case, never tried a felony case. I have tried almost 60 jury trials, most of which were felony cases. And that is why his lack of experience translates into problems at the state attorney's office. It translates into cases being reversed on appeal. It translates into prosecutions that are otherwise under attack for prosecutors who didn't have the proper training. And so I bring much more real world legal experience to the position than our current state attorney, which is probably why he hired me to be his chief assistant state attorney the first time he was elected in 2008. Secondly, I think I have a better temperament and judgment for the position. I am known to be a level-headed, reasonable, deliberative person. And those are all qualities that I think are very important when you're handling all the crimes that occur in Monroe County and prosecuting all the crimes from the most minor matters, maybe involving a juvenile, to the most serious crimes that occur in this county, which are, murders. So I think in every respect, I would be a better state attorney, which is probably why I'm endorsed by the last 2 state attorneys of Monroe County.
Thank you, Candidate Barrett. Candidate Ward, I'll give you 30 seconds to rebut that if you want to, or we can go on to the next question.
Well, I mean, that's a wonderful resume if you're applying for a job as a prosecutor. This is an administrative position. Our crime rate is unheard of down there. It's below 2018, 2019. The crime rate is down over 30%. Over 30%, ladies and gentlemen. And that's because of my ability to work with law enforcement to make sure that we resolve these cases effectively. Mr. Barrett spent 15 months as a chief assistant. He has no experience in running the state attorney's office. None.
Thank you, Mr. Ward. The next question is for Candidate Ward. Violent protests have rocked the country. There are state attorneys in some counties that have refused to prosecute subjects for violent protest-related crimes. Can you share with us your thoughts as they relate to these violent protests?
Yes, my thoughts when you look at what's going on around the country and watching police cars being burnt, police officers being assaulted, it's very concerning. People's businesses are being broken into and burned down and looted. I've experienced working in situations like this as a law enforcement officer on the street, and I won't tolerate that type of conduct. We welcome any peaceful protest. If you have a protest and you want to peacefully do that protest, that's fine with us, but don't come down here and burn people's property and break into their stores and steal their items, because we're not going to tolerate that. And we're going to prosecute everybody to the fullest extent of the law. You're not going to see me as a state attorney say, well, I'm not going to prosecute these things, like what happened up in Miami. If you're out there and you're violating ordinances or you're violating curfews, then you're going to be charged with that and you're going to be held accountable. We'll continue to do that. Hopefully we won't have that down here. We keep sending messages. We're doing a very effective job. Some of the biggest law firms in this country are run by non-lawyers. Half the sheriffs in this state were never police officers. So we're doing a lot, and it's pretty much of an accomplishment for me and my staff. I got some wonderful staff My executive director is a 40-year labor and employment attorney. We deal with labor issues, employment issues. My chief assistant is the only board certified criminal lawyer in Monroe County and has been for some time. So when people speak about people out of position and ethics and stuff, you know, there's nothing else to grasp onto. We're doing such a good job that my opponent has to blame me for one of my prosecutors being suspended when the guy he's going to make executive director is the person that should have handled that instance, and they dumped it on me.
Thank you, Mr. Ward. The next question is for candidate Barrett. The Keys are a state area of critical concern. I know our current state attorney has made the protection of our natural resources a top priority. Can you share with us your perspective on the protection of our natural resources and whether this would be one of your priorities?
Yes, it would be a priority. Obviously, our natural resources are what makes the Keys unique and beautiful, and why we, certainly one of the reasons we all live here and why so many people come to visit. So of course, that would be a priority for me. Where I differ with the current state attorney is his policy, his ineffective and misguided policy of seeking jail time on many minor marine fishery violations, such as someone who's caught an undersized fish or an undersized lobster. It's not that those things shouldn't be prosecuted. They certainly should be prosecuted, but many people who are charged with those crimes don't know all the rules, didn't mean to break any rules, and they're just a tourist in the Keys. I've had a number of clients who were charged with those types of crimes who the state attorney's office was seeking jail on, who tell me, you know, that there was an innocent mistake and they never want to come back to the Keys based on the way their case was handled. And not only that, but most of the judges don't go along with the policy. So the state attorney's office is, you know, enthusiastically seeking jail time on these minor matters, and the judges don't even impose it. So that's why I say it's misguided and ineffective. Any per se policy like that is not a way to seek justice. Justice is sought one case at a time by looking at the individual facts and circumstances of every case. We're not robots in the courtroom. It's human beings in the courtroom. And that's how we will evaluate cases. So yes, they'll be prosecuted, but they will not be, there will not be a blanket policy similar to what's in place now.
Thank you, candidate Barrett. The next question is for candidate Ward. Under what circumstances is it appropriate to try a minor as an adult?
Well, I think it's appropriate to try a minor in murder cases, in sexual battery cases, cases involving firearms, where there's a robbery, maybe some type of hijacking of a car using a weapon. Pretty much any time a weapon is brandished and used, there's a good chance that if you're a minor, you're going to be charged as an adult. So exactly like the one that took place in Key Largo at the park 3 or 4 weeks ago, that guy firing shots up into the air and shooting at the drug dealer he just ripped off. I mean, certainly we could have had an innocent bystander wounded or killed, and we see that on the television, and we read that in the newspaper day in and day out. I am not going to allow that type of conduct to take place in Monroe County. I am not going to allow people to come down here and commit crimes. You don't come down here and sling your drugs. Don't come down here and steal our lower units and our boat engines and our GPSs and our boats, because this is not Dade County. It's not Broward County. You're not going to get probation. You're going to go to jail. And the same thing with our natural resources. Hey, you know, once you get 3 over the limit, then the jail policy kicks in. This is what the whole election is about, because there's a small group of defense attorneys that are upset that they can't guarantee their clients that there won't be jail time in their plea offer or in their sentence. And it's easy money, and all you got to do is tell them, hey, you know, you do a little bit probation, and you take a class and pay a fine.
Warning.
Order for 6 months, and then you're out of here. That's the whole issue here. Our natural environment. These natural resources feed 1,600 families. 1,600 families rely on commercial fishermen. Thank you.
Thank you, candidate Warden. The last question will be for candidate Barrett. As state attorney, are you prepared to seek the death penalty if it's warranted?
Well, fortunately, there's very few cases in Monroe County of which I've been aware in the last 20 years that even warrant consideration of the death penalty. So we're fortunate to live in a county where that is the case. As state attorney, part of my job would be to evaluate the appropriateness of the death penalty in cases. There is an analysis that takes place on the front end of a case, and that is whether or not there's certain statutory aggravators that are present that can be proven, whether or not those statutory aggravators outweigh statutory mitigators that will also be weighed. But I don't think statistically that the death penalty is really very effective. I don't think it's a deterrent, either a specific or general deterrent. And it's probably more costly in the long run to seek the death penalty against someone with the appeals that ensue thereafter than it is to seek life imprisonment. So it would be part of my job, but it would be the exceedingly rare case where I think it would be appropriately sought if I were state attorney.
Okay, thank you, candidate Barrett. We'll now move to closing statements. You'll each have 1 minute. I will begin with candidate Ward.
I just want to say thank you to the Federation and the Tavernier Community Association for allowing us to come and speak. I am the best qualified person for this job. I was your state attorney from 2009 to 2013 and from 2016 to the present date. It's no wonder that my opponent is endorsed by the two former state attorneys that I beat, right? There's a reason I beat them, because of the job I did. First time we prosecuted corruption where people were stealing taxpayer dollars left and right. Of specific note, the school superintendent and his wife stole over $1 million from our school system, from our children. We successfully prosecuted both of them. Unbelievably, he's a supporter of my opponent as well. So we have reduced the crime well over 30%. We're protecting our natural resources. We're making Monroe County safer than it's ever been. Thank you.
Thank you, candidate Ward. Candidate Barrett.
I'd also like to thank everyone again for having us tonight. It's been a pleasure to be with you. You know, being the state attorney does not qualify you for the job, unfortunately. Which again is why when Mr. Ward was elected in 2008, he hired me to be his chief assistant state attorney, because I have far more real world legal experience than he does. I would be a more effective state attorney in every respect than Mr. Ward. Successful prosecutions that withstand appeal, management of the office, and community relations. And that is why I'm endorsed by two former state attorneys, one a Democrat and one a Republican, Catherine Vogel and Mark Cole. I will restore a culture of ethics and professionalism to the state attorney's office, and I will represent the citizens of Monroe County with the dignity that they deserve. I ask for your vote on November the 3rd, if not before. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates Ward and Barrett. Good luck to both of you. I will now move on to the race for state senator, district number 39. The two candidates are Javier Fernandez and Ana Marie Rodriguez. The first question will be to Mr. Fernandez. Mr. Fernandez here?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you.
Okay, good. Question: the Florida Keys is home to the only living reef in the United States. It has some of the largest seagrass meadows in the world, and it is home to over 6,000 marine species. It is almost an impossible task to patrol and protect these natural resources. Would you support the funding for additional Florida Wildlife Commission officers to better protect our marine resources?
Absolutely, I would support additional funding. And as a complement to that, we also need to make sure that we are investing in water quality initiatives across the district to make sure that we preserve the water coming into those water bodies that are degrading those resources as well. So whether it's supporting fully funding the Stewardship Act to advance water quality projects across the district in the Keys in particular, I'd be committed to doing that, making sure that we have a carve out permanently in the Land Acquisition Trust Fund to make sure those dollars come on a predictable and dependable basis to advance these projects in Monroe County.
Thank you. The next question will be for Ms. Rodriguez. And speaking of water quality, The question here is, there is a concern over the Turkey Point cooling canals, how it impacts our aquifer and the surrounding environment. What is your position on these canals, and how will you guarantee clean and reliable drinking water for the Florida Keys?
Well, thank you again, Mr. Barreto, and to all of you for inviting me this evening. I think one of the solutions that we need to look at is the possibility of creating cooling towers. And this is something that FPL would have to implement. Inevitably, it would increase the overall electricity bills for everyone in the area. And that is something that we need to consider when building these towers, is the cost of the infrastructure of this type of technology. But I think that that would be something that would help with the situation. And I would encourage FPL, and I would encourage everyone to consider that as a possibility to the cooling canals that we have now.
Thank you, Ms. Rodriguez. Mr. Fernandez, we have been frustrated by preemptive bills coming out of Tallahassee that restrict the county's ability to regulate, for instance, the vacation rental industry. What steps will you take to help the Keys take back control of, among other things, the rental industry?
Well, I'll continue my fight in Tallahassee. I've been an unabashed supporter of home rule, fighting against local preemption in this particular issue, voted against efforts by the Florida Realtors who employ our local chapter, my opponent here, and have been the leading proponents of preemption efforts across the state to basically take away your local power to regulate the duration, nature, and tenure of the stay across these units. I think it's a fundamental issue that should be reserved locally. And I'm the only candidate in this race that has a 100% voting record fighting against preemption efforts in Tallahassee.
Thank you, sir. The next question, Ms. Rodriguez. The question, do you think Florida should continue to move away from public schools in favor of more privatization?
Well, that's a great question. My children actually attend public school, unlike my opponent who sends his children to private school, which I fully support school choice. I think people should have the ability, parents particularly should decide the best course for their children's education. I think it's the best decisions are made by families and not by government. And that is why I support our Florida's families to be the ones that decide where their children should be educated. I think that, public schools should absolutely be fully funded. I've always been a supporter of increasing teacher salaries. As a matter of fact, this past session, we put Florida in the top 5 in the nation in terms of teacher salaries. We bumped it up close to $50,000 as a starting salary per teacher. And that was something that was implemented again in the last legislative session. So my track record has always been supportive of public school education. However, I think that parental choice is something that's important and should be maintained.
Okay.
If I may just rebut on that issue very briefly.
Yes, you may, Mr. Fernandez.
Thank you, Mr. Barreto. First and foremost, my opponent has a very clear record of only diverting dollars out of our public school system, which are already underfunded, and that underfunding by the state for more than 20 years has been the pretext for saying their schools are failing. Our teachers, our starting teachers, did get a raise this year, but our veteran teachers are basically going to be earning the same as starting teachers with less than 10 years of the profession. I'm committed to raising teacher pay for veteran teachers and fully funding our public schools, not diverting those dollars to charters and or voucher programs as my opponent has.
You can start over. Thank you, sir. The next question will go to you, Mr. Fernandez. What is, if elected, what is the most important piece of legislation that you will be sponsoring?
Well, again, I think I mentioned the paramount issue for the Florida Keys and much of Florida is our ability to preserve potable water. And so I want to be the advocate, given the geography of this district. We represent the vast majority of the Everglades, Dade and Monroe portions. I think you need someone who's absolutely committed to the environment, environmental quality, water quality. And so I will be advancing a very aggressive agenda to make sure that we are dealing with pollution north of Lake Okeechobee, and also making sure that we have the requisite resources to preserve water quality initiatives here in Monroe County. That's why I've been endorsed by every major environmental organization, including the Sierra Club, League of Conservation Voters, Vote Water, and the Everglades Trust.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Rodriguez, a question. Sea level rise is a pressing concern. With recent king tides, we have large portions of some neighborhoods completely underwater. This is a problem that is not ebbing, but rather growing in scope. If elected, what do you believe you could do to provide relief for this growing problem?
Well, when I'm elected to the Florida Senate, you'll have no greater champion to bring home the resources to our area that we're going to need to build up the infrastructure. I can cite an example of a local municipality a little bit north of Monroe, up in Miami Beach, where they invested in pump stations, elevating roads, and other infrastructure. And that's something that we're going to have to do not only with the municipal dollars and the county dollars, but again, you're going to need a champion and a strong advocate in the Senate that can help bring home those resources to our area. And so that's something that you will absolutely have in me. And I think that you'll be making the right choice by electing me.
Okay, Mr. Fernandez, the county relies on the state to support our health department. The state has recently cut back on that very important support. With COVID-19 and dengue fever, our challenges have grown. Would you work to ensure that the county has the support needed to address these challenges?
Absolutely. I think first and foremost, this crisis has highlighted the lack of capacity that exists in our public health department due to the constant subtraction of funding from that system. We have people who, including our Surgeon General, who are unqualified to hold the position they currently hold. We have people across the system, as I'm learning more about it, that are probably not staffed in the proper positions. And I think one clear example of that was the need to hire hundreds of epidemiologists at the start of this outbreak, which just, I guess, highlights the lack of capacity that exists in the system. Moreover, we're seeing a governor who has taken a heavy hand in circumscribing the authority, the role of health department directors in advising local councils, be it school boards or local commissions. That's something that I will fight mightily against. We need an independent and fully funded public health department because I think we've learned now more than ever that it is an integral part of supporting our economy.
Thank you. And last question from Mrs. Rodriguez. Would you tell us what your top priority would be if you were elected?
Well, I think the top priority would be to bring back the economy. I think the economy is definitely on the right path. We're in an upward trajectory, but I know that a lot of Keys businesses are still reeling from Hurricane Irma. Unfortunately, I think we need to be the support system that the Keys needs and that the business owners need to really get fully back to where they need to be and be thriving. I would also make one of my top priorities, our public safety. I'm happy to say that I have the support of Sheriff Ramsey from Monroe County on my side, as well as the South Florida PBA and the Florida PBA. So again, public safety is one of my top priorities. I would also, as I mentioned earlier in one of my responses, bringing home the state resources that the Keys needs. You've had incredible representation with Holly Rashine and Annie Terry Flores, both of who endorsed me as well. And I will continue being that champion for the Keys and bringing home the resources that we need for water quality, safety, road improvements, and everything in between.
Okay, thank you. That concludes my questions. You will now each have 1 minute for closing statements. We will begin with Mr. Fernandez.
Well, first, let me thank the Federation and TCA for inviting us on today. To Rick and Dottie, thank you for the invitation. And to Chief Pareto, thank you for your service. Thank you for making this fellow explorer very proud. I'm a native of South Florida, born and raised in District 39, and proudly looking forward to representing the Florida Senate. I'm an attorney in private practice, but I have a rich history as an advocate for affordable housing and working at the local level to transform the city of Miami during my time working for Mayor Diaz there. I am a current state representative, but more importantly, I am the only candidate in this race that's been endorsed by every environmental organization. So if you care about water quality, you care about the environment, I'm your candidate. I'm also the only candidate endorsed by both the Monroe teachers and Miami-Dade teachers unions because they understand and they've seen my work on behalf of public education. And finally, if you care about safety, I'm also the only candidate endorsed by the Fraternal Order of Police, our nurses, and our firefighters. I look forward to serving you in the Florida Senate, being your advocate, being your champion on all the issues of concern, and getting to know all of you personally here after we get over this crisis. Thank you for the time.
Thank you. Ms. Rodriguez?
Well, I want to thank the Federation again, Chief Barreto, Ms. Moses, Ms. Hartman, the Tavernier Community Association for inviting me this evening. My service speaks for itself. The things that I've done as a state representative speak for themselves. I am a champion for the district that I represent, which is currently House District 105. I will be a tireless advocate for the Keys once I get to the Florida Senate. On a personal note, I'm a mother, I'm a wife, I'm somebody who is a public servant more than anything, not a politician. I work in my professional capacity for the Miami Association of Realtors, and one of my passions is home ownership and helping people become homeowners in our community. I am grateful for this opportunity again, and I am looking forward to representing you in the Florida Senate. Thank you so much, and God bless.
Thank you, candidates Fernandez and Rodriguez, and good luck to both of you.
Thank
We
you.
will now move on to the race for State Representative District 120. There are two candidates, Jim Vernon Mooney Jr. and Clint Barris. The first question will be directed to candidate Mooney. Question, if elected as our state representative, will you tell us what your top priority will be?
Yes, sir. Well, first and foremost, obviously, it continues to be water quality. Nobody can pretend that that's not the #1 driving factor in all of South Florida. Be it, well, along with quality, it's quantity. We have to preserve our aquifer. We have to work with Florida Power and Light to get rid of the saltwater intrusion that continues to occur. And we also have a litany of other issues that start with sea level rise. We have got to attack that. We cannot be behind the curve. Changing codes is the first and easiest way to start, because hunting down money obviously is very difficult for these projects. That said, you've got 2023 looming out there. We are going to have to figure out how to pay for the takings cases, because we all know they're coming, because it wouldn't be the first takings case in Monroe County. And that's frightening. That right now is sitting in today's market roughly $1 billion. That would literally bankrupt stem to stern in this county. So we have a lot of things to take on, and I'll be prepared to take them on.
Okay, Mr. Barris, we'll give you the same question. If you're elected as state representative, what would your top priority be?
Thank you, Mr. Barreto. I appreciate the question and certainly the opportunity to be here. And Dottie, thank you as well. Certainly, and I would agree with Mr. Mooney in that regard, that I too believe that clean water is of paramount importance for us. The polluted water that's been poisoning Florida Bay and our reef for over 20 years. We know how to fix this issue, and that is certainly something that we need to do. Secondly, we're the canary in the coal mine here for sea level rise in District 120. Our state, unfortunately, still doesn't even have a plan to address climate change in general, certainly not sea level rise. In Monroe County and at Key West, and some municipalities are being very proactive, but at a state level, we're severely lacking there. And then just in general, a rep can bring forward 6 bills every year. And I know already my first bill is going to be campaign finance reform.
Thank you, sir. Next question would be for Mr. Mooney. Can you share with your perspective on the restoration of voter rights for felons?
Well, you know, it was an overwhelming referendum, and I don't disagree that they should be allowed to vote again. I'm still a firm believer that they need to pay their debts. That is part of that referendum, and I believe that it has to be done. That's fair. That's very fair, considering where they sat 5 years ago, 2 years ago, 50 years ago, when they were completely shut out from the process. I honestly believe that if they paid their dues, paid the penalties, paid the fines, they should be allowed to vote, and I don't have a problem with that.
Thank you, sir. Next question for Mr. Barris. The state has preempted local governments from being able to regulate their vacation rentals. Will you advocate for more legislation that will rescind these preemptions and other preemption laws like it?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and just recently in the last legislative session, you know, the state preempted Key West sunscreen ban, which I was very vocal in getting that passed at the local level. But absolutely, there are many issues that are best decided at the local level. Certainly vacation rentals is another one of those. And I would imagine too, here in Key West, we're having the cruise ship ban or vote in the referendum. Those are issues that need to be decided at a local level. I would not be preempting decisions at a state level that I feel would be best served locally, for sure.
Thank you, Mr. Barris. Mr. Mooney, the question, not a day goes by that we do not hear about violent incidents involving guns. Can you share with us your position on the Second Amendment and whether you support reasonable gun control?
Yes, I am a firm believer in the Second Amendment. This country was founded on the First and Second Amendment in particular. Obviously, gun control is a hot topic and has been for a number of years. I think the biggest issue with gun control right now is not the gun in and of itself. We need to focus more on the mental health. We need to get back to the basics. We need to start early in education. We need to teach people. We need to look at people that have some issues mentally, learning disabilities. And if you look at the history of gun violence, particularly in the schools, you'll see that most of those kids are always behind the curve. And they just get lost in the shuffle, and that's unacceptable, absolutely unacceptable. I'm a former teacher, and there's nothing easy about it, but I do believe that we certainly need to attack that area with all the power we have. I look forward to working with legislators to produce bills to make sure that our teachers, our citizens are protected at the lowest and first level, and that is education. If we can get the mental health issues, we can work towards the goal that makes things better, get more money get the more funding, create better areas throughout the state, and particularly in this district. We know that the Monroe County's overall health facilities are at best antiquated. Through nobody's fault, it's just been lack of funding, and we need to get that funding because we need to help these people. We cannot let them just walk out through the door and be unattended and pretend that everything's going to be a-okay. It's not. But the Second Amendment has to be preserved. But there are ways to do it, and we can do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mooney. Mr. Barris, on the ballot is an amendment that would require amendments to the state constitution to be approved by voters in 2 elections instead of 1. Can you tell us if you support this amendment and why?
No, I don't support that amendment. For 2 election cycles, you're basically punting for as long as 4 years. I think that this is another obstacle that the legislator is trying to put in front of the will of the voters. So no, I do not support that initiative.
Thank you, Mr. Barris. The next question will be for Mr. Mooney. Do you support the idea of qualified teachers being allowed to carry a concealed firearm as a way of increasing school safety?
I don't support that. And I'll tell you why. Sheriff Ramsey made a great point at a meeting I was attended. And while it may work on paper, assuming that everything goes perfect, the point he made was really a home run. And that was clearly when his officers are called into a situation in the school, they don't know who the bad guy is. They just don't know who the bad guy is. And God forbid that they turn the corner and they see somebody have the gun. I think, evidence has proven that bad things happen when police officers see guns. Nothing good's going to come out of that. I do support the overall hardening of the school infrastructures to create safer classrooms. I think that's very important. I know that all our new schools are, and unfortunately, most new schools are still being built around the Columbine issue. But, make it more difficult for the bad guy to get in. But guns with teachers, and I'm a former teacher, maybe I could have carried a gun. I don't know. I was raised with guns. I'm not sure I taught school with some teachers that should be carrying guns, and I don't see that as a positive outcome that's going to lead to a better outcome. So, no, I don't support teachers carrying guns.
Thank you, Mr. Mooney. Mr. Barris, how will you as a state representative attack and address this whole large issue of sea level rise and its impact to our low-lying islands?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. Well, I think it's very important too. And Mr. Mooney, mentioned that our two most pressing issues here are our water quality and sea level rise. For our water quality, Mr. Mooney has refused to sign the Clean Water Pledge, and he's been taking campaign contributions from known sugar and corporate polluters. So I think that that's really important when you kind of source where he's coming from here. And then on the sea level rise issue, Mooney several times has been on the record saying that climate change is a natural Earth occurrence, which of course it is. Over millions of years, the climate will change for numerous reasons. But the steep incline of what we're facing now in our climate emergency is clearly related to human activity. And if a candidate or a rep is not able to admit that that is the problem, that humans are the problem, then they are certainly not going to be part of the solution. So I have come up with a 4-point plan to address a climate emergency. Again, knowing that our state over the last 2 decades has done absolutely nothing. So I put together a 4-point plan where we can basically start pointing Florida in the right direction. It starts with everything from identifying where our carbon is coming from, and then devising a plan. And this would be from a multi-panel intergovernmental academic community groups, and then putting Florida on a path for clean energy for all, 100% clean, renewable, fossil fuel energy by 2050. And then we have to start looking at how we can reduce the carbon in our atmosphere. And for Florida, we have a lot of sequestration methods here that we could use.
Morning.
Mangroves are one of the #1 sources for pulling in carbon. And then finally, we need to kind of modernize the way that people use our public transportation and try to pull as many cars off the street as possible.
Thank you, Mr. Bears. Mr. Mooney, would you like to rebut?
Oh, absolutely, sir. Well, that's just horse nonsense. That's just the bottom line. I grew up in the Florida Keys. I have been fighting for clean water. The fact that the clean water people spent over 6 figures fighting me and slandering me, God bless them, because I would have put that money towards a project they could have done some good things with. As far as going to Tallahassee and not pretending to know what's happening, that's nonsense too. Mr. Barris knows that I said Earth changes, but we absolutely are part of the problem, but we're not all the problem. We have to address it from stem to stern, left and right.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Barris, the Tourist Development Council is regulated by state statute. Are you in favor of any changes to the current regulations? And if so, what?
No, so the Tourist Development Council, I think that they get a lot of blame. They've been trying to get in front of that recently, doing some some presentations. I know that they've spoken to Dottie Moses's group before in the past. Here in Monroe County, we already take 25% of all of the bed tax collections and put that into capital resources. And then each district advisory council, they get an equal share as the generic. And so they're putting those monies into different events. Now, obviously, tourism has been incredibly successful, but it is our #1 industry down here. And so, before we start looking at, pulling away from tourism, I think that we need to also start looking at how we will support our economy without so much influence from that specific industry. And that goes right back to the health of our environment. Both our tourism and our second most influential economy is fishing, both of which are tied closely to our environment. And I fully believe that and know that our environment is in steep decline, and we need to take immediate action at the state level. We've done what we can do here locally, and now it's going to take state efforts to fix what is broken.
Thank you, Mr. Barris. The last question will be for Mr. Mooney. If elected, can you articulate what your top 2 legislative initiatives will be?
Well, I think definitely to continue the climate fight, contrary to popular belief, and some popular beliefs. I'm a big climate guy. I've spent the last 6 years in climate summits. Regional Alamorada has been a leader, one of the few leaders in the South Florida Regional PAC. We have voted yes on everything, and I will continue to do that. I also, we need to, again, focus on 2023. It seems to get lost in the shuffle. It is dire that we address 2023. There is nothing, we can't allow 9,000 more lots to be developed. And so we have got to sit there and fight for our right to be reimbursed for the takings cases that potentially sit out there again and loom at $1 billion. You know, those are just a couple of things, but yeah, I'm going to fight for climate because look, I live in Islamorada. I grew up in Islamorada. I'm a Florida Keys guy through and through. I'm a 5th generation Floridian. Don't be fooled by who endorses whom when it comes to climate and clean water. I'm fighting for everything that I believe in, and that's who I am, and that's what I've always been, and I will not change.
Okay, thank you. Thank you to both of you. You will both now have closing statements. You'll each have 1 minute. We will begin with candidate Barris.
Hi. Well, thank you. Well, sadly, the pandemic is only the latest and the most visible crisis our Republican leaders have failed to address in Tallahassee. Climate change is still the greatest threat facing our district, and it's been completely ignored for the past decades. The state has no master plan, no inventory of carbon emissions, no plan to reduce our reliance on dirty fossil fuels, nothing. When I'm elected, I'll make policy decisions that are grounded in science, and I will do everything in my power to put us on a track to be a global leader in renewable energy. And we're the Sunshine State, and we should start acting like it. I'm not a career politician. This is my first campaign, and I am running to be a public servant. I want to be able to serve the needs of our community and our state. I will not compromise my values or my integrity, and I'm fighting for my children's future and for all of our children's futures. I'm Clint Barris, and if you elect me for District 120, I will fight tirelessly to represent you with honor and integrity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Barris. Mr. Mooney?
Yeah, first of all, thank you to the Federation and Tavernier. This is very special. You know, as freshmen, I keep hearing you're going to get squashed as freshmen. Freshmen have no standing in the legislature, and I'm sure that's probably the case. My experience will negate that. I can fight for Monroe County. I can fight for this district. This district is very dynamic, and I understand stem to stern. As a 65-year lifer in Monroe County, there are very few issues I don't understand. Some of them very, very difficult and very convoluted and have no easy answer. That's just the way it works. But I'm not afraid to make tough decisions. I don't always vote for what I think I like. I vote for what's right for the best. And so I will represent this district with honesty, integrity, and hard work. I look forward to representing you, and please vote for me on or before November 3rd. Thank you. And best of luck to all the candidates.
Thank you, candidates Mooney and Barris, for being here, and good luck to both of you. I will now move on to the race for County Commission District 1. There are 2 candidates, Craig Cates and Annalise Mannix. Did Mr. Cates come, or we just have 1 candidate? Dottie, unmute yourself. I can't hear you.
He's saying 1.
Yeah, we only have 1 as far as I know. Sorry.
Okay. And the questions will go to candidate Mannix. The first question. There has been recent talk of implementing a toll on the overseas highway entering the Keys. Can you explain if you are for or against such a proposal and why?
I am certainly for that proposal. I believe that the toll will enable us to fund roadway projects, which are well needed, stormwater projects, which are needed not only to ensure that our roads remain in good shape, but it reduces negative impacts to nearshore waters, helping our environment. And it will also help to fund these very large, heavy budget items that are mitigation for sea level rise.
Okay, thank you. The next question. There's a continuing argument as to the county's 35 to 38-foot height restriction on all new construction. Do you support continuing the existing restriction, and if not, why?
I support limiting height restrictions. I don't believe that we should be building large towers. The new buildings need to fit in with the nature of the existing community. Over time, if there's in areas that have a significant sea level rise impact, flood insurance changes cause a building to need to be elevated a few extra feet, then I can see, a few extra feet being warranted in those cases, because we do want to protect our investments.
Okay, the next question is sea level rise. It's a contemporary issue, as you know. It's projected to affect many of our waterfront properties. It's already affecting them. Going forward, what would you do as a county commissioner to address sea level rise?
Well, yeah, the first thing I would do is look at the current plan that we have and verify that the projects moving forward are allocated based on cost to benefit for the neighborhoods that are impacted, that all the neighborhoods that are impacted are identified. Then I would charge the engineers with verifying that the proposed plan to elevate everything be adjusted to look at what can be done in the short term for less money by compartmentalizing what the issues are, making sure that we're not addressing a 40 or 50 year problem and therefore pushing out projects year after year because we can't fund it, but looking what can we do immediately. I also believe we need to have dedicated funding sources, and there are a variety of ways to find them.
Thank you. Next question. The county's emergency pay plan, along with a substantial expense, caught us all by surprise after Hurricane Irma. We are paying overtime to persons in management positions who would not ordinarily be entitled to overtime. At the same time, we're having to raise property taxes. Do you feel this program, this emergency pay plan program, is appropriate, or could it be improved?
I think that we had several opportunities to improve it. Unfortunately, it was not improved. The pay plan and when it's called for, right? So I think we need to have a plan that not only addresses exactly how you pay people, but when, why, where they're working, what they're working on, how early you start to prepare for things. This needs to be laid out in a plan so that everybody knows about it up front. I do not believe that our administration should be being paid overtime. Maybe we should have a comp time, administrative leave. When you're working for weeks on end, sun up to sundown, yeah, you need to be able to go home at the end and take your shutters off your house and demold and take care of your yard, because somebody needs to do it, right? Nobody's doing it for you. But I do not believe we should be paying extra funds for administration.
Okay, and the last question will be, if elected, can you tell us what your top priority will be?
Well, I would say my top priority would be implementing this stormwater program and getting dedicated funding for it. And I'll tell you why. Our stormwater system impacts our environment tremendously. Our environment impacts our tourism. It impacts our commercial fishermen. It impacts our tour guides, or fishing guides. Nearshore water is really important. And over the years, we've allowed buildings to be built and roads to be improved, and everything runs off, and it's great. In a lot of areas it runs off. It's great that it runs off, but it shouldn't always run off. And in other areas, we've just never installed stormwater infrastructure where it needs to be because the roads are deteriorating. And rebuilding the roads is really expensive. Yet, building a few stormwater systems could probably, extend those roadways for a decade or multiple decades. And then the other part of stormwater, is tidal related. So, making sure that we have the right funding for those issues would be the highest priority for me. It's doable, it's realistic, it's something that absolutely needs to be done. It helps us all.
Thank you. You will now have 1 minute to make a closing statement.
Well, first I want to thank the Tavernier Community Association and Key Largo Federation of Homeowners for putting on this forum. I think it's really important for us all to get out the message that, you know, we want to, so that people can make good, educated decisions about who they're electing. I love the Keys. I love the small town feel that we have in each different community. And that people here really care for each other. They help each other in time of need, hurricanes coming, after hurricanes, COVID, what have you. I love the water, the environment. I've worked hard many years to protect that environment and protect our quality of life. I'm saddened to see what's been happening in the Keys with too much traffic, damage to our environment, homes and neighborhoods being stressed and pushed out. And I think we need a commission looking forward to solving the problems that we have identified for years but not implemented.
Okay, thank you, candidate Mannix. We wish you the best of luck. And we will now go on to the race for County Commission District number 3.
Thank you.
There are 2 candidates in that race, Heather Carruthers and Eddie Martinez. Dottie, do we have just one candidate in this as well? Yes, okay, you're shaking your head. Okay, candidate Carruthers, you will get all the questions. You know,
oh,
learn what
darn.
we can from you. The first question. There has been numerous complaints arising from the increased use, and some may argue overuse, of our public parks. Not readily available to deal with park violations. Would you support the concept of hiring park guards with enforcement powers to better manage some of our busy parks?
Well, I think that you're probably talking about some of the parks in the Upper Keys that are seeing an influx of folks from outside of the county, which obviously is of concern to us. You know, Harry Harris, at least there's an entry fee that should get folks in. We actually had in our budget this year to hire a Parks and Rec director who would have been responsible for addressing this kind of issue, but because of the budget, we do not have the funds to do that at this point. It's a very interesting idea, and yeah, I think I would be interested in finding out a way to enforce any kinds of violations and overuse of the parks. You know, we build parks hoping that the folks who live here will be able to use them, but they need to be able to do it safely and respectfully. You know, it saddens me when people aren't aware of the people around them and disrespect the infrastructure that we've provided for them. But sure, I would take a look at that. Here in Higgs Beach, we use a combination of the sheriff's staff as well as sometimes assisted by the city of police at this end of the county, and maybe we should be doing that throughout.
Okay, thank you. The next question, the state of Florida has collectively offered the county 1,300 additional ROGO allocations. Many feel this will adversely affect evacuation times prior to a hurricane. Could you please share with us your position on these allocations?
Sure. Well, as you know, the allocations were divided amongst the municipalities with 300 on the table for the unincorporated Monroe. I voted against us accepting those, and for a number of reasons. First, I think, frankly, the mechanics of how you create workforce housing for people in the workforce who are required to leave ahead of time, ahead of a potential storm, I think are troublesome, and I'm not sure that they will work. I mean, half the time our workforce people need to be the last ones to leave because they're here buttoning up the keys before they get out of town. So I think that there are logistical problems there. But the other problems that I see are exactly related to what you've just said in terms of overcrowding and too many people. I have a concern that it does open the door, because suddenly if you can make the argument that if you agree to get out of harm's way ahead of everyone else, you should be able to build here. Well, why wouldn't that be true of any second homeowner or any other homeowner? So I think that there's a legal problem and a legal precedent that it sets. And also I think that we have existing market rate ROGOs that have not been spoken for that we could use to fill the void. Right now, we do not have requests out there for additional affordable or workforce units, and we have sufficient allocations to provide to fulfill those. And certainly, when we see that now 61% of the homes in the Keys are second homes, maybe it's time that we take a look at how we make sure that any of our existing allocations are used for workforce housing where our greatest need exists.
Warning.
Thank you. And following up on the workforce housing, affordable workforce housing remains a big issue. Big businesses are often built without concern for the requisite workforce housing. What should the role of business community be in supporting workforce housing?
Well, you probably know that we just passed an inclusionary housing proposal, so that anyone who is building or renovating a property needs to make sure that they have sufficient housing or for a good portion of their workforce. So I think that that's part of the role. We all wish that wages were high enough where people could afford to purchase down here, and that just isn't happening at this point right now. So I think business has to do what it can to support their employees to a level where they can afford to live here. And I do think that as businesses redevelop and as new businesses are created, they have to provide sufficient workforce housing for at least a good portion of their folks. And that's what we've done with the inclusionary rule.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll move to a different subject. The county recently approved close to $1 million to be spent on Bayview Manor. You feel this expense is necessary, and why?
I think that Bayview Manor, I think that you're talking about Bayshore and Poinciana Gardens in the Lower Keys.
I was given the question by one of our viewers. I'm under the impression that it's a 16-unit home for elderly.
Okay, yes. So that's Bayshore Manor. That's on Stock Island here, and it's an aging building. Poinciana Gardens is an assisted living and senior facility that was built within the city of Key West several years ago. It has not been fully populated, and they've had trouble. It's been managed lately by the Housing Authority, and they've had trouble, frankly, making it run in the black. So what we have agreed to do is to work with the city of Key West and Poinciana Gardens to support that facility. And the reason that I support that is because it's a superior facility. We tried to do this when they were first building it, but we couldn't work with the city administration at that time to ensure that our folks from Bayshore Manor would have a home in Poinciana and that the people who care for them would also be there. But we're working that out right now. So it's $478,000 actually this year that we have pledged to help our seniors in the Lower Keys.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Last question. The governor has recently lifted all COVID-related restrictions. In the event of a substantial increase in new COVID-related cases and/or deaths in the Florida Keys, would you support another general lockdown to minimize our exposure?
Well, first, let me correct this misinterpretation of the governor's order. What the governor simply said was that local governments could not enforce against individuals in terms of any local ordinances requiring things like masks. So that means that you can't cite or fine or arrest somebody individually for not wearing a mask. And we just this afternoon got another legal opinion from the Florida Association of Counties Attorneys in conjunction with the governor's attorneys, stipulating that, in fact, local governments could continue to enforce their masking ordinances through businesses. So if we say that you have to be inside a business, when you're inside a business, you need to wear a mask, and the business does not enforce that, the business can be cited. Is that fair on the business? I'm not completely convinced, but it's the mechanism that we have that has been left to us right now. Would I support another shutdown? It really depends on the ability of our hospitals to deal with the COVID cases. And that's what drove the checkpoint in the first place. You know, when this was first starting, we were really concerned that with two small hospitals, I mean, Fisherman's is basically under construction and doesn't have a very many beds. We wanted to make sure that we would be able to support the COVID patients as well as you know, take care of if you break a leg or have a heart attack or you're having a baby. I mean, hospitals have to provide all those services. And if we were overwhelmed, it would be impossible for us to do that. And we're at the footsteps of Miami-Dade and Broward, and those were the hot spots within the state of Florida, indeed within the country. So if it comes to that again, yes, I would. Because I don't think that we would get support from the state. I mean, it was tough enough the first time around, and I highly doubt that the governor would allow us to do it the second time.
Thank you, Candidate Carruthers. You'll now have a minute to do a closing statement.
Sure. Well, first, thank you, Mr. Barreto and the Federation and TCA. I first ran to bring transparency, accountability, and fiscal responsibility to the BOCC, and I have delivered. We now have an accessible website, a public information office, a clearer budget process, state of the county reports. I've made tough decisions and taken responsibility for county actions, even when admitting missteps has been uncomfortable. I've supported developing a professional qualified workforce. I've helped keep millage rates low while improving services. I have been an engaged member of this county for over 20 years. As a former employer, former hotelier, self-employed professional, grassroots organizer with firm, and as your county commissioner, I've honed the skills and developed the relationships needed to address the challenges before us. I've served with integrity, earned the respect of my colleagues at all levels on both sides of the aisle. I know the keys. I'm committed to continue serving them. Please visit carruthersforcommission.com and please give me your vote on November 3rd or before. Thank you all very much.
Commissioner Carruthers, thank you for your service and good luck to you in the upcoming race. We will now go on to the race for County Commission District number 5. There are 2 candidates, Jose Pixoto and Mike Forster. The first question we directed to candidate Pixoto. Do you support an increase in property taxes for the coming year? And if so, why do you feel it would be necessary? Dottie, do we have Commissioner candidate Pixoto?
We do, but I'm having a little trouble. Jose, can you hear us?
I hear you very well.
I don't know why, but I cannot. Oh, you don't have your video operating. Can you operate your video?
I'm in.
Okay, hold on. Now I can't find you. There you are. Okay, there you go. Sorry.
Can you
Okay,
repeat
we're
the
good to
question,
go.
please?
The first question would be directed to you, Mr. Pixoto. Do you support an increase in property taxes for the coming year? And if so, why do you feel it would be necessary?
As one of my goals, it's not raise any taxes at all. I think we already have a $500 million budget. I think we can work on, especially in this time with the COVID-19 and all the, the businesses shut down and people always believe in the small government, less taxes, and less regulations and rules.
Thank you, Mr. Pixoto. The next question will go to candidate Forster. If you be elected, what would your top 3 priorities be for the commission?
Top 3 priorities especially for District 5 would be sea level rise with Silwright Point, Twin Lakes as a priority. And people are going to say, well, where's the funding for that? And I'm going to say, well, we have to find the funding, either a private-public partnership. We find money, grants from the federal government, state government. But that's something that just can't keep going on. We got to stop kicking the can down the road. Also, want to address Sunset Park and what's going on there. We need to do some maybe some cost recovery on some parking spaces and have attendance there. I want to deal with Rouse Marina, Harry Harris Park, and also I want to address the VRBOs on those small boats sitting out there in the bay. That's got to cease.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Forster. The next question would be for Mr. Pietro. Can you share with us your thoughts on a toll coming into the Keys?
It's one of my, in the beginning of my campaign, I bring that out. I think we should be and some of the commissioners and some of their leaders here say, well, there not should be $20 or $25. I do believe. What I believe that because the great percentage of the tourists come up to us, they didn't spend any money here. And when the tourists come into us, they are able to pay $150, $250 for the hotel. They'll not be afraid, or they'll not be, cheap enough to do not pay $20 to come to this beautiful sanctuary, the capital of the world in the diving, which is the Key Largo, this beautiful sea we have here. And I don't think $20, $25 is going to be any problem for tourists. Now, the working forces, which is what about people coming from the homestead. Listen, if you put a $20 stove over there, they'll come in 5 people in the car. Well, if the car is capable to have 4 people, they'll do it. They'll find a way to get here. But the real tourists do not gonna be complaining about pay $20 or $25 to come to this beautiful environment. And that money, we should be strict with. It's not for to take care of the roads. There already been money for that. When you pay your taxes for your car, your tag, it's already money for the roads to be taken care. We're gonna bring a toll for protect the Florida Keys Sanctuary. That money should be used for our sanctuary, to clean our beaches, to protect our corals, to everything else related to the tourism, to the impact the tourists bring it to us.
Thank you, Mr. Pessotto. The next question for Forrester. We touched on Harry Harrison Sunset Parks a minute ago. They have become increasingly popular due in part to their proximity to Dade County. They're often overcrowded, which results in illegal parking, among other adverse impacts experienced by the surrounding neighborhoods. What would you propose to address some of these problematic issues?
So just as I stated before, I took a tour of those areas and went with some homeowners. And I really believe that if there's no areas to park, then there should be no parking, and they should be towed if they park in those areas. If the areas are designated for that park, the residents would not pay the fee to park there, but there should be some cost recovery in order to have attendants there that have code enforcement powers. So if they're drinking alcohol in those parks, then they get cited for drinking. So we need to be the first line of defense with code enforcement, and then secondarily the sheriff's department. And that's the way the sheriff will be more proactive and want to join forces with us. But I really believe that the fees should be up there for non-locals, and you have to pay to play, and it happens everywhere. When I go to Key West and I hit that parking meter for $18 and I come back, I don't look at that parking meter and I'm so mad at it, because I had a really good time. And I believe that these people who use the park, they need to pay that cost recovery, and it shouldn't be on the backs of the taxpayers of our area, and the impact should be felt by those neighborhoods as well.
Thank you, Mr. Forrester. The next question is for Mr. Pixoto. Rowell's Park has had its development plans postponed for the past 3 years. As a District 5 Commissioner, what will you do to move that project forward?
First of all, we have to find the money for, but I see money being wasted here with the county. And I think we can use some of that money. For example, I'm always say this in my campaign, TDC, there's a $50 million budget there. Some people say that's not our money. Yes, their money being collected here from the people coming in the hotels. That money should be used not only for Key West, not only for Marathon, but that money can be used here in the Keys. Think about $1 million, $2, $3 million from that budget coming to help House Marina to be done the job we need to do in over there. And I think we have to do that, but because of proximity with Miami, we have to put a fee over there. That park should be for the Upper Keys or for the Morrow County residents. And we should have a very good size of fee, not $1, $2. We should be charged a big money there for the people who's not resident in Morrow County. But I think we have the money somewhere. We just have to find the money first, and we have to finish that project. We spent that $5+ million there in that think just sit over there for nothing. And we need someplace here in the Keys. We don't have any public boat ramp here in Key Largo.
Okay, thank you. The next question is for Mr. Forster. It's been reported at Hometown Key West, you suggested building a large garage in Key Largo as part of a transportation solution. Can you expand upon this vision and share with us where such a garage might be built?
Sure. So I think that was taking out of context. My position on reducing the footprint of a carbon footprint and also the amount of traffic on our highways is to come up with a district transportation system. And that includes even across from Holiday Isle, the FDOT lot that sits empty. I'd like to see people park and ride. As far as designated areas in Key Largo, I would look for lots similar to that lot, that FDOT lot, but not a lot that would impact any residential neighborhood. It'd have to be a commercial lot, and it'd have to have the right trip generation to be able to hold it and to handle it without causing more harm. But I think that we need to take more cars off the road. We need to possibly go with a freebie like we do in Alamorada, where you park your car for your whole vacation and you take the freebie, and it's also good for locals and also for the elderly for making doctor's appointments. So if we can reduce the amount of cars and the amount of trips on our highway, we wouldn't have this gridlock every week.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Pixoto, can you tell us what your one top priority will be if elected as a District 5 Commissioner?
Serving the Monroe County residents, not the big corporations, not the big developers. I think we're being left behind all these years. If you look at it, you know, those big sugars, lords, the big developers, big hotels, big condominiums, that's the people being helped by the commissioners. I think we have to help the county commission, the people of Monroe County. One of my priorities would be make sure nothing gonna come by surprise to be voted by the county commissioners. I think everything else should be out of there 15 days before vote. And if you guys elect me, I wanna make sure you guys communicate with me, tell me how I should be voted. You can communicate with me by the social media, by my phone, any way you can, but I'll vote for the Monroe County people, not for the big interest, the big corporation. That's my top priority. Helping and serve the Monroe County people, not the big corporations.
Okay, thank you. And the last question is for Mr. Forster. It's reported as Mayor of Alamorada, you asked for and received 300 additional ROGO affordable building allocations. Also reported that during your campaign, you stated that there was no place to build these units in Alamorada, therefore they would have to be built in Key Largo. If that's the case, can you tell us where you propose to build these units in Key Largo?
Okay, so once again, that's not the case. We do have areas in Alamorada that are waiting for affordable allocations that have been mitigated by the neighborhoods. There's a development right where I have my business behind it at Sunset Inn that started as 42 units and was mitigated by the neighborhood to 24 and accepted and passed, and everybody's happy. So I think there's a lot that I know of. It's right near Key Lime at 95 that has been sitting on the table for a long time. Now, is it the right amount of units? I can't say that it is. Is it an infill lot? Is it something that even the Monroe County Planning Department said it was a great location for it, and they passed that. So I believe that's one area. But I would work with the neighborhoods as far as mitigating the density. If it works for the community, they're infill lots, commercial lots, but I would impose big density affordable units on people. They'd have to be in moderation. But the 300 units, I don't say we use all 300 units, but we have them in the bank in case we do need them. So we in Alamorada at this point don't have plans to use 300 units, but there's no way that we would pass up on them.
Okay, thank you. And we will now move on to closing statements. Mr. Pixoto, you will have 1 minute, followed by Mr. Forster.
I'd like to thank you, Tavernier Community Association, the Federation, for this event. Thank you very much for bringing us to give us idea to the people. You guys have a great questions for us, but I'm always like to remember you. Our leaders needs to be very good in their job to run the county commissioners, but they have to have a very good moral behave. They should be having integrity. They should be a very, very honest people. You're about to give us a $500 million budget to run, and we're gonna make us a leader. We're gonna be around your families, your kids, your wives, your daughters, your mothers, around our parks, our city halls, our libraries, and I promise to you, you will be not afraid to leave your females around me because I haven't any sexual harassment case against me, and I never have any case sexual harassment against anybody else. God bless America.
Thank you, Mr. Soto. Mr. Forster?
Yeah, so thank you, Federation, and thank you, Tavernier. Tavernier, I just want you to know I look forward to being in your association as being a new resident on Beach Road, and I look forward to working with you. So, you know, I'm a 5-term elected. I wouldn't be a 5-term elected if it wasn't the will of the people, and I must be doing something right to have the trust of where I live, and I want to build that trust with the Federation and with Tavernier. I know I'm not your golden child right now. I know that we have some differences, but I'm here to tell you that we can find some magic in the middle. We can work together, and we can make Key Largo the best that it can be. And I'm committed and passionate about it. And this is not a stepping stone for another position further up. This is the end of my road here. The county commission is the end of the road. Vote for Mike Forster, County Commission, District 5.
Thank you, Mr. Forster, and thank both candidates, Pixoto and Forster. We wish you the best of luck. We'll now move on to the last race, which is the Key Largo Fire and Emergency Medical Board, seat number 5. There are 2 candidates for this race, Daniel Powers and Ronald Spodnik. Dottie, do we have a Spodnik or we just have Mr. Powers?
We just have Mr. Powers, as far as I know.
Get all the questions.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, the first question to Mr. Powers. The Key Largo Fire Department is staffed with a combination of full and part-time employees. Retention of the volunteers continues to be a challenge. Would you be in favor of a ballot issue that would increase the millage rate beyond the 1 mil cap as a means of funding more full-time employees?
Well, with raising the millage rate, it has taken 10 years in order to get the millage rate up to where it is now. Talking with the accountants and looking over our budget, we're good for approximately 2 more years. I personally think we are going to have to go ahead and ask for a millage rate increase. But I would like you to understand that it took 10 years to use up 1 whole millage rate. Are we going to raise it up a whole millage rate? Not for myself. I will not vote to use a whole millage rate. I would think that we would take baby steps like we did with the first millage rate of 1%. And that's, yes, in order to keep personnel and to keep the equipment and everything running, I do agree in the future, we probably will have to raise the millage rate.
All right, thank you. The next question, this is kind of a controversial one. What is your position regarding the old land and the old building that's adjacent to Station 24 that is presently vacant?
I personally feel if they want to make a museum out of the building, let them make a museum out of the building. I just feel that there's land there that either can be used by the fire department or can be sold off for housing in order to use that money to go ahead and help with equipment and with the needs that we have in the community.
Okay, thank you. Next question. Currently, there is 1 chief for 2 separate departments. One department is the fire department, the other is the ambulance corps. Would you be in favor of a study to determine if merging the 2 departments would provide more effective service and be more cost effective for taxpayers?
There again, right now, cost effective with having the two departments is working out very well. We have this discussion at our meetings about combining the two departments. There again, I would like to be part of, yes, if there is a merging of the two departments, to be involved in it. Right now, if you have a fire, you have your fire department running to it, but you also have EMS personnel going there to protect our firefighters and or the people in the community and the taxpayers. So it's kind of a twofold deal, but they're getting a double whammy as far as I'm concerned because of the process of having EMS on the side.
Well, the last question is related, and that is, how would you compare the level of service provided by the county to that which is provided by Key Largo?
We have some of the best people in that department. Their training in the last 4 years that I've been involved, their training has probably doubled, if not more. And I feel that the community and the taxpayers are more than adequate for their service. When the phone rings 911 and they call out Key Largo fire and or ambulance, I feel we are getting the best possible system that we have.
Okay, I actually have a couple more questions. Would you be in favor of exploring the possibility of expanding the Key Largo Fire District to the Tavernier Creek Bridge?
That would have to be between the two communities to expand themselves to the two, from Tavernier Creek Bridge up to the 112. That is probably beyond my direction, unless I am directed by the associations, which the Homeowners Association, the Federation, and TCA. I feel that if they get together and they decide that that's what they want, then I will work 100% to give them what they wish.
Okay, thank you for that answer. And then the last question, this is the last question. Key Largo could arguably be called the diving capital of the state. The fire department at one time had a water emergency team capable of responding to, among other things, diving accidents. Would you be in favor of returning such a capability to the fire department? And if not, why do you think it is not needed?
I don't have a problem with having a dive team. If we have the finances, we have all the equipment, and we have the personnel that actually want to do it, yes, we can have another dive team. I have no objections to having a dive team.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Powers. You'll now have 1 minute to give a closing statement. Anything you would like to say?
Well, my name is Dan Powers. I've been in the Keys for 40 years. My main concern in doing this is I was involved with EMS and fire since 1984, worked with Key Largo Volunteer. I was also a volunteer fireman up in Ocean Reef, and I retired from Monroe County Fire Rescue. I have the experience. I know what the equipment is. When they talk about it and they need it, without any hesitation, get it. We have to make sure that the safety of the community and the public is our #1 priority. And that's what I've worked on the last 4 years, and I plan to do it if elected again, and I pray for your votes. Thank you.
Thank you, Candidate Powers. And ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our candidate forum. I would like to thank all of the candidates once again for their participation, and again, wish them all good luck. And at this time, I will turn it back to Dottie Moses.
Okay, so thank you for joining us tonight. We hope our audience got to know a little bit more about the candidates. Have a good night, and we'll see you all at the polls. Good night.
Thank you, guys. Thank
All
you.
right, thank you
Thank
all.
you all for
Good
coming.
night. Thank you.
Thank you very much.